20. Yes, we have no bananas, or cheating a little. I remember the first time I drove through Miami, Ohio. I was visiting a friend newly moved there, and up to then I had never heard of Miami in Ohio, assuming there was only one, it naturally belonging to Florida. What confused matters even more was that right smack in the middle of the lawn across the way from my friend's house was a banana tree. Not in a hothouse or anything, just in the middle of the lawn, like a diminutive flagpole waving a lot of green flags. During the winters I had spent in Ohio, the temperature used to go down to 10 below zero. The banana tree was too big to take indoors, and it wasn't made of plastic. All of which added up to a puzzlement until I found out it was in a buried pot, and the owner cut the plant down to within a few inches of the soil every fall and put it in the basement next to the oil burner for the cold winter. By that time, the banana would have a batch of suckers sprouting around the main stalk. These he would cover over with mulch during their basement seclusion. Come spring, he would let the new shoots stretch in a warm sunny window before taking the pot outdoors again. Suddenly, overnight, his lawn would be sporting a new waving banana plant. I never did find out where he got the original plant, something I lived to regret. Because when the after-dinner garden bug bit me, one of the things I wanted most to grow was a banana plant. And what a struggle that was! My first approach to the species was to a local bunch of the plumpest, ripest Chiquita bananas to be had. Viewing them with a critical eye, not formally interested in the botanical makeup of the bananas, I was struck by the similarity of the inside of a banana to the inside of a Chinese gooseberry. That is, when looked closely, there were several ribs of the tiny seeds running lengthwise through the fruit. Of course, they were terribly small, but then so were those of the Chinese gooseberry, and they had sprouted eventually. After picking the seeds carefully out of several halved bananas, I disguised the pock-marked remains with great gobs of trimmings as banana splits. The minuscule seeds I carefully dried on tissue paper for a day and then transferred half to wet cheesecloth-lined containers and half to a pot of nice rich soil, covering those with an 1/8 inch of humus. I was planting plenty because I didn't really hold out much hope for the Chiquitas. They had been specially bred for a beautiful banana with seeds so as you wouldn't notice them when you ate it, and with superior handling and keeping qualities for carefree shipping, while the plant itself was developed to be highly disease-resistant and relatively low-growing so as not to be damaged readily by winds. Not surprisingly, somewhere along the way, the Gros Michel, as this banana variety is known, lost much of its flavor. The gold-backed darling of the United Fruit Company and other American banana importers is about the equivalent of paper pulp in taste compared with cultivated species of the Far East and elsewhere. In Indonesia, for instance, it is considered so inferior it is fed only to babies who presumably don't know enough to argue. Be that as it may, I soon found out my problem wasn't going to be getting a tastier banana to grow from Chiquita seeds, but rather getting anything to grow from them at all. The brown banana specks I had so carefully tended turned out to be aborted seeds from ovules never fertilized. The beginnings of the banana are buried somewhere in southern Asia, and because thousands of variants developed over the centuries, the exact location and type of the parent plant will probably never be unearthed. Nevertheless, the fact remains that many of the edible bananas whose names cover a vast range, Creole banana, Saint Pierre banana, black banana, plumed banana, horn banana, eyeless banana, red fig banana, and Go Sai Hyun, meaning the perfume that descends from the mountains in Chinese. To make just a start on the list, do have proper plantable seeds in assorted sizes. Unfortunately, the fact also emerges that even more of these countless edible bananas are seedless. Some botanists believe that primitive bananas with fertile seeds were cultivated in ancient times not only for the fruit but for the tender heart of the plant itself, still used as food in Ethiopia today. That banana plants were among the earliest of man's crops is that banana plants were among the earliest of man's crop is fairly well argued upon. Exactly how long ago that was is still a question. Beccarii, for instance, believes they were an important cultivated crop as early as the Pliocene epoch, spanning the period from 1 to 10 million years ago. But since paleontologists aren't exactly sure that man existed then as man, at least, and botanists aren't sure that bananas as we know it existed either, it seems fruitless to carry the speculation any further. At any rate, P. Popenoe in J. Heredity 1914, Volume 5, page 273, attributes the development of the modern seedless banana to hybridization of wild diploid varieties or plants having two sets of similar chromosomes. As often happens with hybrids, these produced sterile plants. But things didn't end there, for the banana's fortunate latent talent for producing offsprings by means of suckers came to the fore, and from the sterile plants, new little sterile plants sprang, and so on. The new seedless banana, in all probability, wouldn't have gotten very far. Although the birds feasting on the seeded variety would end up scattering banana seeds for miles around, they would have nothing to do with transporting suckers. They were just as happy eating seedless bananas, of course, but that didn't do the suckers a whit of good in thumbing a ride anywhere. The human was just as happy eating seedless bananas too, if not happier. Then again, he would just as soon have a banana plant growing next to his hut as walk 3 miles for breakfast. Having a choice between moving his resistance to the banana and moving the banana to his house, he naturally chose the latter. At least that's the assumption. He dug out some small suckers from a banana patch and took them home to replant. Borne along by such pragmatic reasoning, the banana spread slowly and surely throughout the eons across all of Southeast Asia, finally reaching the Pacific during the first Polynesian migration about the time of Christ. All of which would imply that the logical approach to banana planting would be to study some rudimentary forms of musa, the species to which banana belong, checking particularly how they flower and fruit. That way I should at least come up with enough facts to calculate the odds on finding a banana with fertile seeds. The only handy reference to a study on the floral morphology of the banana was to an article by P.R. White in Z. Zelfoscht Microscope, Annat, 1928, Volume 7, page 673. A classic, I'm told, though you can't prove it by me. I couldn't get through the title, much less the contents. So much for the logical approach. Besides, by now I had found some dwarf wild bananas at a fruit stand. On examination, I must admit, their seeds didn't seem much more promising. They were the same size as the others actually, even if proportionately judged by the size of the banana, they were bigger. Going through the same extraction process, I dutifully planted them. Much to my surprise, 5 weeks later, a small green shoot rose in the center of the pot. It was only about half an inch tall, but to my frustrated and overwrought imagination, the leaves were definitely, at least in protocol, banana-ish. Susan would have none of my dwarf banana plants start out small theory and remained a firm disbeliever. Without even bothering to give my mini banana another look, she bet me a home-baked banana cream pie, one of my favorites. It was no cousin of a musa. I lost, but Susan's winnings weren't exactly what she'd expected. Pie baking isn't my forte, and besides, I didn't consider doing the dishes afterwards part of the bargain. I didn't consider doing the dishes afterwards part of the bargain. That was the night when, at 3 o'clock in the morning, after Susan had bravely devoured a large portion of my pie, I was awakened by a sharp elbow in my ribcage. Plantains. Maybe Susan was wide awake, due, I maintain, to the gastric consequences of her wager, though she stoutly denies it, but I wasn't, and I proceeded to roll over. Another elbow in my ribs, followed by the inevitable plantains. By now I was pestered enough to manage plantains, you know, those big green cooking bananas. I think I remember them having bigger seeds. Now there are times I'm happy there are 24-hour grocery stores in the neighborhood. Then again, there are times when I'm not particularly. It was the middle of January and 5 degrees out. The bed was warm and comfortable. There were no more rib ticklers, but sleep had gone the way of the wild banana. We stopped on our way back with a bag of plantains for ham and eggs. One might as well start the farm chores in the wee small hours after a hearty man-sized breakfast. When we got home, I prepared and planted the seeds, which were indeed a little bigger. But these too never did sprout. The subject of plantains was not brought up again in our house, and for a while we went back to eating exclusively regular uncooking bananas. The homely banana, forever associated in some American minds with slicing over cereal, has apparently been linked with the ready mix breakfast idea since long before the days of freeze drying. Going back to the 12th century, in fact, I found Fan Chen mentioning in his Kui Hai Yu Hian Chi, in translation of course, that bananas can be preserved by being soaked in sugared plum juice, dried, and then pressed flat. Crystals of sugar remain on the outside frost, as Fan Chen puts it, giving a pleasant sweet and sour taste. Although the plant itself originates in the Indo-Malay region, the term banana is of African origin. Here too the fruit was thought worth preserving even by pre-refrigerator methods. H. M. Stanley, in his book In Darkest Africa, mentions a banana flour ground from the dried fruit. If only the virtues of the flour were publicly known, he writes, it is not doubted that it would largely be consumed in Europe for infants, persons of delicate digestion, dyspeptics, and those suffering from temporary derangement of the stomach. The flour properly prepared will be in universal demand. During my 2 attacks of gastritis, a light gruel of this, mixed with milk, was the only matter that could be digested. Indeed, it seems to me banana flour would add a different touch to the same old recipes, and I'm surprised no chef has tried to trademark it. Attempts of vaguely successful nature have been made to manufacture banana coffee, banana wine, and banana vinegar. Not to mention banana jam, for which I found the following commercial recipe. Take 200 pounds of sugar, 10 gallons of water, and 12 ounces of cream of tartar, and boil them to 230 degrees Fahrenheit. Add 2.5 gallons of lemon juice and 200 pounds of ripe banana pulp. Boil to 224 degrees Fahrenheit. Although a bit on massive side, Susan thinks it would be worth trying with peanut butter on rye. One of the more esoteric uses of the banana was conceived during the great raisin shortage of World War II. I myself am unfamiliar with that particular deprivation, but I have been assured that it did in fact exist. Apparently it spawned banibs. Banibs, in case you've never heard of them either, are ersatz remains made from ground dehydrated whole bananas mixed with washed copra meal and 10% sugar and dry rolled into raisin-sized pellets. However, the projects never really got off the ground. The Indians, with no particular shortage of raisins in their past, have an uninterrupted culinary tradition in the very tasty, if unpronounceable, Panchamrutham, a confection using banana pulp and raisins with ghee, molasses, honey, and sugar added to make sure it's sweet enough. In some regions, variants of this are served in fig-sized pieces, approximately enough, called banana figs. For that matter, dried banana chunks in general are often dubbed figs. 16th century writers referred to bananas as Adam's figs or apples of paradise. The legend was that the banana was the tree of knowledge in the Garden of Eden. This supports a point of mine. After reading up on tropical fruits, I've come to the conclusion that just about the only thing never suggested at one time or another as being on the tree of knowledge is the truffle, and that's probably only because no one thought of checking down around the roots. But meanwhile, we were still eating bananas, all kinds, makes, and models of bananas, and still no fruitful-looking seeds in any of them. In the end, I finally admitted defeat and decided a little cheating in this case couldn't hurt. Well, after all, it can only be a matter of time till they're just jetting in shipments of big, seedy, healthy bananas direct from somewhere. I sent away for some banana seeds. I had hunted down 2 establishments that carry banana seeds. Harry E. Sayer of Dimondale, Michigan, whose catalog for only 50 cents is an incredible store of ideas for novel things to plant, and G.O.W. Park Seed Company in Greenwood, South Carolina. Sayer carried the wider variety of the two, Musa coccinea chinensis, Musa arnoldiana, and Musa ensaite. I learned that M. ensaite should be ordered from him towards the end of January, the M. coccinea chinensis at the end of September. As for the M. arnoldiana, the best thing to do is leave a standing order. Mr. Sayer cannot always be sure when a new shipment will arrive, and the open order guarantees the seeds will be fresh. I find the procedure as a pleasant element of surprise to the whole thing, since one never knows when the seeds are coming. G.O.W. Park carries M. ensaite and M. arnoldiana and has these seeds in constant supply, preserved in hermetically sealed envelopes. The germination time for banana is highly erratic, anywhere from 1 week to 4 months. It's a help to them, though not a necessity, to have bottom heat. If you want to be fancy about it, special waterproof cables for this purpose can be purchased at gardening supply store. But for the after-dinner garden, I found base heat for germination pots can be provided quite effectively by a radiator top. It's not as constant a source of heat as the cables, but my pots don't seem to mind that. The one addition needed is a thermometer to take the surface temperature of what the pot is sitting on. If the thermometer registers above 95 degrees, put the layer of cardboard or thin cork under the pot and take another reading on that. 80 to 85 degrees is the ideal you're aiming for, with the temperature at the top of the pot where the seeds are at about 75 degrees. Adjust the thickness of the insulating layer until this temperature range is reached, with the radiator going full blast. Also, when using bottom heat, you will find the evaporation rate from the pot is higher than normal, so remember to check when extra water is needed. Banana seed I found be the M. arnoldiana, M. coccinea, or M. ensate are a tough and lazy lot. One has to nick them pretty roughly and then keep them submerged under water for 24 hours before they'll get down to the business of germinating. The soaking part is easy enough, but the nicking part is about like trying to scratch a diamond with your fingernail. I grudgingly admit, though I have steadfastly refused to let one in the house, that here's where an electric carving knife might really come handy. After splitting two seeds completely apart and managing one very artistic nick in my thumb, I finally achieved at least a deep scratch on a few of the seeds. Following the 24-hour soak, I laid my now docile seeds, the prominent seed scar facing up, in a bed of 2/3 humus and 1/3 soil. I covered them with about 1/4 inch of soil and gave them a thorough dousing. Only in surroundings kept warm and wet will banana seeds submit to growing up. As soon as my seeds were bedded down, Susan's visions of walking down Fifth Avenue parading a large banana leaf as the latest in umbrellas began. But while things happen fast, most of them don't happen quite that fast, particularly not the germination of banana seeds. Mine took almost 6 weeks. Once the first recalcitrant sprout rose, I thought it would make up for lost time. In some experiments recorded in Hawaii, the banana leaves grew 3.5 to 4.5 inches a day and increased in surface area from 59 to 67 square inches per day. Mine didn't. Being indoors and not under perfect conditions, they weren't about to break any world records. But I kept the young plants in a warm, sunny spot, and their steady progress soon assured me that before the Fifth Avenue rainy season, I would have big enough banana leaves to keep Susan's hair dry anyway. Since where there's a banana plant, there's always the bare chance of a sudden crop of little unexpected bananas. There is one word of warning that should be given any after-dinner plantation manager with a banana in his bunch. Sadly but truly, a lot of plants have never learned to live together peacefully. An aggressively ripening banana, intent on its own ends, heedlessly gives off ethylene. You could have real jungle warfare brought on your windowsill if the ethylene invades the air space above a papaya. The papaya, you will recall, could never abide by that. In the interests of the botanical community. Therefore, it might be wise to take proper precautions against an air pollution problem before moving too many plants into any given area.